Time to hang out with my sister girl. Hey, sister girl on films. Hey, sister girl on films. Hey.
Are you watching?
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. It's your girl, Sister Girl on Films. And y'all, your girl is doing a movie review. Listen. I have not done a movie review in a good while. And I think that's because I just have not been to the movies, y'all, like I used to. Whether it be because of time or just like lack of interest of new movies that have come out. And so I kind of made a promise to myself that I would try to get back to doing more movie reviews on the channel. But I ain't gonna make that promise to y'all, okay? Your girl's not gonna do it. But I am kind of excited to talk about Weapons. Weapons was very, very interesting, to say the least. So if you're living under a rock or you just don't know, Weapons is a horror thriller situation that was written and directed by Zach Cregger. Now, Zach Cregger also did Barbarian. So keep that in mind, okay? If you saw Barbarian, then that can kind of like maybe set the tone a little bit for what you could expect from Weapons. Now, I'm going to do a two-parter here. So the first part of this review will be non-spoilers in case you haven't seen it yet and you are considering checking it out, but for whatever reason you were waiting on what I thought about it. And then after that, I'm going to give more spoilery thoughts, you know, to kind of really get to the meat of how I really felt about this movie. So Weapons stars Julia Garner, which you might know her from Ozarks, Josh Brolin, aka Thanos, Benedict Wong, he was in the Doctor Strange movies, and then Amy Madigan, who I remember from Uncle Buck. I don't remember her from a lot of things, but she is in this as well. And so Weapons is essentially following these characters in this town where an event happened where 17 children just up one night all ran out of their homes to never be seen again. Okay, nobody knows what happened. They don't know if it's supernatural, although people are kind of like hesitant to say that, or there's something like more nefarious that's happened. First and foremost, let me just say, this is gonna be one of those movies that I feel like people are really gonna love it or people are really gonna hate it, and there won't be very many people that are in the in-between, okay? I feel like this movie is kind of a hybrid between like elevated horror, but then a little bit of like a dark comedy, like a little horror comedy elements mixed into it. So it's going to throw you for a loop a little bit. But I'll talk more about that in the spoiler section. But let me talk about what I liked about this movie. First and foremost, I feel like the cast was on point. Now, let me say this. I didn't watch any trailers. I saw like a teaser trailer of it. I believe there may have been like a teaser that was at the beginning of Sinners, maybe. I don't know where I saw it, but I did see a teaser for it. So only thing I knew about this movie were the kids running out of the house. That's the only thing I knew. I didn't know who was in this movie. I didn't know what the overall kind of plot was about. I didn't know if it was sci-fi. Like, I had no idea. So I went into this for the most part completely blind. And so with that being said, I was very pleasantly surprised by the cast. Julia Garner, I really loved her performance in Ozark. So when I saw her in this, I was very pleasantly surprised because I feel like she really has a great way of like pulling you into whatever character she's playing. Like, I think she does a great job of like acting in a way that feels like I know this person. Like, I've been around somebody that acts just like this, and I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like she gives that performance, especially in this. She is the teacher of the children that come up missing, and so as a result of that, all eyes are on her. The parents are kind of side-eyeing her because they're like, our kids were in your class. Like, what's going on, sis? And so she really plays almost like a tortured soul to some degree because she's dealing with not only the grief of these children being missing that she built a relationship with, but then also that fear of like now being a pariah, you know, in the community that she's in now, you know, not to mention there's some kind of other things that are going on with her that probably already kind of put a spotlight on her in this community. But again, we'll get into that in the spoilery part. Josh Brolin, I had no idea he was in this movie. So I was pleasantly surprised when I saw Josh Brolin. Obviously, he gives a great performance. He's a great actor. He plays the father of one of the children that is missing. And so he really gives a very emotional performance. That's a little mixture of anger, but sadness. He's definitely going through grief, depression, like just the idea of your child just coming up missing all of a sudden. You know, it's going to turn people, you know, into someone that maybe they don't want to be, causing to do things that, you know, they ordinarily would not do, and really can sometimes push people over the edge. And I think we see a lot of that in his character. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail. We have Kerry Christopher, who plays Alex, who is the lone survivor of this supernatural event. And this baby, I'm really going to get into it in the spoiler part. This baby played a hell of a performance. There's something about children that are going through traumatic, supernatural things that really kind of like can get to you. You know, if y'all know by now, I'm kind of touch and go when it goes to the kid actor. Sometimes I hate them, like, and then sometimes I'm like, that baby did that. And this baby did that. He gave such a great performance. Like my heart just like went out for him. And I just really just was rooting for him the whole time. And I felt so sad for him. And I think there's so many undertones and so many messages also in this movie that, again, I'll get to in the spoiler part. But you just hate to see a child go through what Alex went through in this movie. Not only, you know, the disappearance of his classmates, but then also how, you know, maybe how his family is even interwoven into this story. This actor just did a great job. He did a very good job. And I would love to see him in even more things, you know, beyond that. I feel like he has a great career ahead of him, hopefully. You know, we don't want to jump the gun here. And then we get to Amy Madigan. Baby. Baby, Amy Madigan plays Aunt Gladys, who is something. Aunt Gladys is something. Aunt Gladys is a very eccentric character. And something ain't quite right about Aunt Gladys. Something ain't quite right about her. And I think Amy does a great job. Like, watching the movie and seeing how the varying type of temperaments that she had to portray in this role. Listen, my girl Amy did that. Again, I can't go into too much because then it'd be a spoiler, but her performance as Aunt Gladys was just, she knocked it out the park. She really knocked it out the park. So across the board, performances was my favorite part of the movie. And then another thing that kind of stood out to me was how generic, and I mean this in a good way, how generic the town that they were in felt. And the reason why I'm saying it's generic, because eventually we found out, you know, it was in Pennsylvania, but it could have been anywhere. The school looked like the schools that are here. There are shots of neighborhoods that looks like neighborhoods that I've driven down. The houses, like it feels like this could be in your community. And again, I think that's something that Zach Cregger did really well in Barbarian. The way that this town felt like I could live here really gets you to a place of unease of like, what happens when children go missing? Like, is there something more nefarious going on that we're not looking into? I don't know. So kudos to Zach for that. And then just the overall story. Again, I can't go into much into detail because then it'll be a spoiler. But I feel like the story was pretty well written. You know, it has horror elements to it, thriller elements in it. It does get a little, just a smidge convoluted, but not a whole lot. It makes sense once you understand what's actually happening in this town and with these kids. So I feel like it was a strong story. I can't go into too much detail about that. So those are the things that I liked about Weapons. Now, what I did not like about Weapons, I am not a huge fan of comedy being in a horror movie, especially one that was as dark in tone as this was, unless the intent is for it to be a dark comedy or horror comedy, which just could have been the intent, but that's not necessarily the vibe, the consistent tone that we got throughout. So it kind of felt like it kind of threw off the rhythm when some things would happen that felt like they were supposed to be taken in a comedic way. The ending, I felt very unfulfilled, me personally, with the ending. I really wanted our villain to get more. I needed more to happen to them. Like the way, they got their just due, if you will, was pretty gory and pretty horrific. But I just felt like I needed more to happen to them. I don't know what it was, but I just needed more to happen. And then also, this isn't necessarily like a drawback for me, but it might be for somebody else. But this is a slow burn. You're not going to get a lot of jump scares. It does a good job of character development and really kind of like building out the story and the different characters and things like that. So if you're kind of going into this wanting like a straight up like supernatural like horror film or like a slasher or just to be on the edge of your seat with all this, this ain't gonna be it for you. It is a very slow burn. And I don't mind that, but I think that will kind of turn some audience members off if you're looking for like a more like traditional horror film. But that's all I can say in terms of like non-spoilery stuff. I feel like Weapons, it was a good time. I did enjoy it. I do recommend you check it out. I think, again, it seems like it's been very divisive for people that have seen it. So people have really hated this movie. People have really loved it. For some people, it's the best movie of the year. I'm kind of in the middle. I really enjoyed it. I don't do a rating system, but I guess if I did, out of 5 stars, I would give Weapons like 4 out of 5 stars. So I think it's worth checking out. Again, if you're like kind of squeamish, you don't like a whole lot of horror. The kills are a little brutal. But I think if you aren't a huge horror fan, but you like thrillers, I think you might be able to find something that you like in this. That's all I know. It wasn't too scary. There were attempts at jump scares, and it might work if you're a little scaredy cat. But if you're not, I think it'll be just fine. But yeah, so those are my non-spoiler, like as vague as I can get it, thoughts on Weapons. Again, I recommend it 4 out of 5 stars. So I'm gonna go ahead and get into spoilers. Now, if you didn't see this and you still hung around because you nosy, touch your nose. You're nosy. Don't be mad at me because I'm about to spoil this movie for you. Okay, so let's get to the business, y'all. So there's so many things that I need to say about this movie in terms of spoilers. So first and foremost, let's just go ahead and start with the overall, like, some of the themes that I feel like showed up. I've seen people talk about the theme of parasites in this, which they Marcus and his husband were watching the TV show and they were talking about like the parasite that was in the ants. Fun fact, I actually used to listen to this podcast called Ologies, and they had an episode about zombie ants, which is exactly what they were talking about, where this parasite gets into the dead ant and then they're like kind of moving them around. And I was like, oh my God, I know about this. So I love this idea that Gladys, who is clearly thousands of years old, is a witch, is using the life force of people around her to try to essentially bring herself back to life, or if not bring herself back to life, at least able to continue to exist in the earthly realm, I suppose. So I do love this idea of Gladys really being like a parasite that is moving these people around, because essentially once she puts that spell on them, they are basically zombies. Like, you know, she's taking over their body. They don't move unless she says so. So I really did enjoy that. It was very subtle, but obviously that was a big, you know, point in the movie. One of the things that I haven't heard about as much, but also I was kind of avoiding reviews of this movie because I just wanted, again, to go in blind. And I kind of thought of it when I was watching the movie, that I wonder if this is also a commentary on school shootings and school violence. I only say that because when Archer went out to, well, when he was having that dream sequence and he was following his son throughout the streets or whatever, and then the big like rifle, like the AK-47 or whatever, was in the sky, the weapon, and then it had the time on it. I was like, is this maybe supposed to be a discussion about school violence and school shootings? Hey y'all, it's Editing Me. So I just saw a video of someone that was quoting an interview they saw with Zach Cregger, where he said the scene with the AR-15 with like the time in it, he said it really doesn't symbolize anything, and it's intentionally ambiguous to give the audience like a chance to have their own interpretation of what it means. So there's really no right or wrong answer here, which I just wanted to make a point of that. Because hear me out, I'm not mad at that theory, because if we think about the teacher being held responsible for all the children that were lost, there's almost always in these school shootings a survivor that is always left with that survivor's guilt and that grief of seeing their classmates, you know, be murdered. You know, the idea of the parents trying to find someone to blame, the kids that are bullying Alex, who is essentially our school shooter in a sense, because he's the one that serves up his classmates to Aunt Gladys. So I can see how people could come to that thought, that this might be a discussion about school shootings, or kind of like addressing it a little bit. You know, the principal, you know, trying to get everybody back to normal and all of that. So I can see that. I'm not mad at that theory at all. I also was thinking in terms of a take on Hansel and Gretel. Now, hear me out. This is a reach, honey. I am Stretch Armstrong with this, but my theory is, and obviously loosely, you know, the story of Hansel and Gretel. The witch lures the kids to her cabin with candy so she can get them, cook them, and eat them. And then essentially they put her in the oven and they kill her. So here's why I was thinking Hansel and Gretel a little bit. Because first of all, the teacher's name is Miss Candy. I think that was kind of like a play on the idea of, again, like the candy leading the kids to the witch. The kids were in her class. Alex, again, took their things to get to Aunt Gladys. But I feel like just loosely, you know, the idea of the children being sent to the house to be fed on, you know, by the witch. Also, when Archer was dreaming, they had to run through the woods. They got to the house, although the house was just, I think they kind of went in a circle and whatever the house was. But to me, it just kind of gave like a little bit of, just a little hint of Hansel and Gretel, you know, the children being lost, and, you know, and the witch using them to feed off of. So I feel like that was in there just a little bit, a little inspiration. So that's it in terms of like theories for me. But these performances in this story, okay? First of all, I love this idea of seeing this story play out through each character's perspective. I've always loved movies like that. It just really like immerses me into the story that's being told. Like, I get to see it from this person's perspective. Well, what were you doing when that happened? And I wonder why this person says that. Oh, this is how they saw that. So I really love that. I also think with everybody's different perspective, I think one of the biggest thing that the movie kind of hit on was this idea of everybody can be an unreliable narrator. Justine was unreliable because she was an alcoholic, you know, so how much can we really trust what she's experiencing, and who can she go to, you know, to tell about the things she's experiencing, because everybody blames her for the children being missing. You know, she had a very sordid past before she became a teacher at the school. She's an alcoholic, so all of these other things. Then you have Archer, who is the father that seems to be obsessed with trying to find his child and trying to put the pieces together, and everybody's looking at him crazy. He's seemingly messing up at work. And so now he's kind of unreliable. Like, who's going to believe him? Like, is this just the ramblings of a father who's obsessed with trying to find his child? Or is these credible things that he's bringing to the police? You have the boy that's on drugs. Need I say more? Like, the fact that he called the police to say they found these missing kids, and they didn't even really like take it seriously. Like, they didn't say, hey, well, where we at? No, come into the station, because he's high. He really didn't care. He just wanted the damn reward money. And so knowing that he's a heroin addict or whatever, meth head, I don't know, whatever drug he was on, who's really going to believe him? You know, are you just high right now, or are you lying to get the money? So we have another unreliable narrator. Then we have the ex-boyfriend police officer, where he seemed reliable initially, but then he cut off his body cam and he assaulted the boy. And so now, how reliable are you? It's giving you're kind of a liar. You know, it's kind of giving like, what are you willing to do to save your job and save your upcoming marriage and all these things? And then, of course, we have Alex. You know, like, he can't really say anything because Gladys has his parents at home who she's torturing. So he doesn't even feel like he can say anything. And so that sense of helplessness is very pervasive in this. And I think it all centers around Gladys, you know, our witch in all of this. Who, again, Amy Madigan played Gladys so well. Such a great job. I love a witchy, like, supernatural horror film. I think just the fact that Aunt Gladys seems so, like, quirky and just odd, that it threw people off and people didn't question the things that she was doing until it was too late. I think that was portrayed in a great way with Marcus and his husband, where Marcus was like kind of leery of her, like, well, how did you find my house? Like, this is crazy. And his husband is like, come on in. Nobody questioned her wanting her water in a bowl. They were just like, well, look how she dressed. Look how she looks. She's a little outside the box. So we'll get, like, nobody questioned it just because of her physical appearance and how she was very, like, come in, and bright and all the things. So I love that they made her character so, like, off. It was so off. Like, it gave, she's just a quirky woman. Like, there's nothing to question here when you need to question everything that this lady is doing. And I think the biggest takeaway for me, you know, aside from the whole theory about school shooting, the school violence, parasites, all that, to me, the biggest takeaway is abuse. Child abuse. And how so often it is overlooked with children. You know, Julia was saying that Alex was already kind of quiet and shy because he was being bullied at school. And so when his behavior started to change, she didn't question it because he was already quiet. And he was being essentially abused at home by Gladys. He was definitely being psychologically abused, not physically abused yet, but he was being essentially tortured in that house. And the saddest thing was when they went to do a wellness check and she made him clean up the mess, made him put it all together so that people wouldn't question anything. And you hear that a lot, you know, with children that are abused. And we hear these horrific stories in the news of people having children chained up in closets and all these things. And when we did a wellness check and the kids looked okay, and a lot of times these CPS and DCS and all these things half-ass check on these kids. And because of how little effort they genuinely put into caring for children, a story of like Alex can happen, where his parents are fucking zombies stabbing themselves in the face with a fork. This baby is essentially starved, eating soup every day, feeding it to his parents. I really think it really did hit on the fact that children can be abused and neglected and learn to adapt so much that it doesn't even raise any red flags to anybody. Meanwhile, this child is at home suffering. So I really feel like that was the overall message for real in this movie. Overall, I think the title was pretty clear. Weapons, you know, Gladys was using her zombie ghouls, you know, as weapons, you know, as torpedoes, as people were saying, which I agree. It was really probably bullets. We say torpedoes, but probably really bullets. That's probably why the gun was above the house. Overall, again, I felt like it was a good movie. The ending for me was just kind of, it didn't give what I needed it to give. I felt like for as awful as Gladys was, I felt like she needed to get the same treatment, if not worse, than what she gave to those kids. I really wish that Alex had been able to find, I wish she had destroyed her tree. I feel like destroying that tree would have really like maybe snapped everybody out of it, but who knows? I feel like the ending was kind of bleak, honestly, also with the parents being sent to a mental institution, the children, only a couple of them starting to talk again. Very dark ending, honestly, but I felt like Gladys, I don't know what I wanted to happen to that lady. I don't know if I needed her to burst into flames. I don't know if I needed her to kill herself. I don't know, like the kids ripping her apart was okay. It kind of reminded me of Cooties. That whole ending scene with the children reminded me so much of Cooties, and honestly it kind of took me out of it, because it again, that was where some of that humor came into it, and I was just like, I don't need this. I don't need the notes of that type of humor, because of how cold and evil Gladys was, and how much she abused Alex, that I felt like her having this chase through these neighborhoods, I don't know, it just felt like a really unfulfilling ending for me. Very similar to Barbarian, if I'm being honest. I hated the ending of Barbarian, the little incest girl running through the streets naked, and I hated it. So maybe, you know, this is something to expect from Zach Cregger in terms of like his movies and his filmmaking going forward. You know, and how he'll throw in these elements of horror and maybe kind of like a more like, not necessarily like a lighthearted ending, because the ending of Barbarian was dark. The ending of this was dark, but it was done in a way that I don't know, it feels like he doesn't want to go there. You know what I mean? It feels like he wants to give audiences a break, because his movies can be so heavy and dark. Don't give us no damn break. Keep the darkness going. Keep it going. Like, even if Alex had ended up, you know, feeling like he wanted to get payback on his classmates and never told anybody that they were in the house, and just kind of went on with his life and killed Gladys, and I don't know, something, but I just didn't like the way that it ended. But yeah, y'all, I think that's it. Again, 4 out of 5 stars. Weapons was cool. You know, again, I think people are kind of up and down with this whole idea of elevated horror. That's one thing I did want to say. After kind of thinking about it, a lot of these new like elevated horror movies are actually kind of reminding me more of a throwback to the 70s, and how horror films were in the 70s. Because if you go back and watch any of those horror movies, they all feel like slow burns, but they're done well. The acting is great. The story is captivating, and there's always like some crazy ass demonic witchcrafty shit that's happening in it. And that's what a lot of these newer like non-slasher horror films have kind of reminded me of, honestly. But that's the last thing I really wanted to say about this. I've been recording all day, y'all, and I feel like I'm losing my voice. But y'all let me know y'all thoughts about Weapons. Let me know if you saw it, how you felt about it. Did you like it? Did you not like it? How are you feeling about Zach Cregger as a writer and director? He is starting to maybe show, this is the second film that I've seen of him. I don't know if I'm a huge fan of his style of horror. I don't know. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, y'all, like this video, share this video, subscribe to my channel. And I'm going to see y'all next time for something else. Bye.